I am Wes, modern mythology enthusiast and defender of the realm of toy collecting. This is Andy, my fearless friend. Fabulous secrets were revealed to me the day I powered up my dynamic mic and said, "Welcome to Fandom Power!" Andy became the mighty producer Andrew Daw, and I became host Wes, the newest pop culture podcaster on the interwebs. Only two others shared this secret, friend of the show and regular co-host Hank McLaughlin, and my lovely wife Kimberly. Together, we defend the realms of pop culture from the evil forces of toxic fandom. Hi, Scott.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Sorry, I've got multiple devices here.
Oh, I know. I can appreciate that. I'm the same. I'm a mix of like high tech, low tech, no tech.
Pretty much. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. How am I coming through for you?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm not a big Skype user, but the background, can you see that?
Your attorney? Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. I thought it was a little nicer than just the blank space behind me, which actually, I actually have a small retail business, so I'm actually in my store, so this kind of is a nicer setting than shelving.
What kind of store do you have?
Believe it or not, I have a small independent toy store.
Oh,
so this is right up my alley. So I gotta tell you this before we get going. This is kind of my my Star Trek First Contact moment when Picard is able to put his hand on the Phoenix. So I really appreciate you taking the time and the want to sit down and chat with me this morning.
The line must be drawn here.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, my time in the military. One thing I learned was if you don't ask for something, you don't get it. So I felt like it was a bit of a risk for me to just sort of blindly reach out to you. But had I not done that, we wouldn't be able to do this today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Honestly, I'm always excited to talk toys because it's not like I talk to my wife and my daughter about this stuff. So it's always fun.
Yeah, interestingly enough, I remember. So I was a day one subscriber to Masters of the Universe Classics, and I remember. So what we're talking 2008, but I remember you and the videos that you did for Mattel to interact with the fan community, and I have to say I don't remember any other person from any other toy company interacting with the fan community that way at that time. So I certainly appreciate that aspect of it. And I always thought that made you more approachable.
If nothing else, I'm approachable.
Yeah. I know that I don't want to take up a whole lot of your time this morning. I know that I'm sure you're a busy guy. So thank you for looking over the questions I sent over. There's nothing there that's off limits for you?
No. And if, as we go, if there's something I can't answer for
proprietary
reasons, I'll just say so.
Okay, that's perfect. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to embarrass you. I didn't want to embarrass me.
Not at all.
More importantly,
we can jump in. I don't want to lose any valuable conversation tidbits.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I really appreciate that. So, why don't we dive right into it and just kind of go back to sort of the early days of the brand? And certainly, this is kind of where my introduction is, the vintage line. So,
it's recording on your end?
I am recording already. Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I should do is I should record this. I'm recording the audio, but I should record the video as well. Not sure what happened there, but
it says now recording.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, let's go back into it and talk about sort of our introductions to the line, the vintage line back in '82. I don't know how old you were back then, but I was still very much in my youth. And as I like to say, Masters of the Universe was one of the big three boys brands of the 1980s. As a fan, what was your introduction to the brand?
So let's see. So when I was 4, and on my 4th birthday, I was very sick. Not like COVID-19 or anything. Just sick enough, like with a cold, a normal kid cold, that my parents had to cancel my birthday party just so I didn't get my friends sick.
Oh.
But of course, to a 4-year-old, this is, like the end of the world that your birthday party is being canceled or postponed. So to cheer me up, my parents gave me their gifts to me that day, knowing my party wasn't going to be for a few more weeks now. And what they gave me was Castle Grayskull, He-Man, Skeletor, Battle Cat, Stratos, and Man at Arms. So
Oh
I
wow,
got
that's
a
that's
big
a great
infusion.
birthday.
Yeah, it was like a huge infusion all at once, and it was like love at first sight. This was like amazing. I used to carry the castle around with me everywhere. And then with my actual birthday, but now a few weeks later, a
Right.
lot of my friends gave me. I got more more stuff. I know I got the Tila and Zora 2-pack.
Yeah.
I got Tila. Um, and I mean, I'm sure there were others, but it's interesting. I never had a lot like some of the other early figures. Like I never had Beastman. I never had
Right.
Merman. I never had Zodak. But then as the brand went on, I mean, I had tons I mean, just so many figures. Fisto, Buzz-Off, Whiplash, Clawful, Trapjaw, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And yeah, that was basically. I was also a very skinny kid when I was a kid,
Right.
and so the idea of this very big powerhouse muscle guy was very aspirational to me, even if it was on a subconscious level. So
I can definitely relate to that. I certainly echo some of the things that you say, in the sense that I'm the other way. I'm a little heavier. I'm a big guy, and I've always kind of been a big guy, and so fitness has never been like this. It's always been a challenge for me. So again, I mean, seeing these like muscle bound dudes, in 5.5 inch form was something, like you say, that you could aspire to. Clearly I have not met those aspirations, but I'm not disillusioned to that either. So that's great.
if you
Did you?
actually looked like He-Man, you'd like fall over because
Yeah, really. So disproportionate, but yet so iconic. Did you, or do you have a favorite character from the vintage line that you still like is your favorite today?
Stratos is definitely a big one. And Trapjaw. Everyone loves Trapjaw. But I love Stratos because I love flying characters, and he had a jetpack, and that was,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely big on Stratos.
Is a fan favorite for me as well. Probably one of the first characters that I got. Unlike you, Beastman was my first vintage figure, and I think Stratos came the same year that I got him. It was, I think, Christmas probably. Oh, it was probably 83 or 84 maybe. I'm trying to remember back that far. Let's fast forward a little bit and talk about getting to go to work at Mattel. I mean, presumably you were like a normal kid. You went to school, college, and then thought you were going to go off and take your degree and do something. Did you ever imagine taking now you have a degree in communications, correct?
Yeah, I have a double major in film and communication from
Film and communication.
UCSB.
Oh, wow. Did you have aspirations of taking that into the toy industry?
So, well, what I wanted to do, like you said, yeah. If you would have called me normal, or any of us,
Sure.
um, what I wanted to do was become a screenwriter and specifically to write TV commercials. Like
Right.
my golden goose was if I could have written a Super Bowl commercial, if you will.
Right.
And which is why I majored in film. But then I realized sort of halfway through my college years that I wasn't learning any real world skills
Right.
besides how to watch movies. So I added communication as a second major. And I actually wrote my senior thesis on for film on using action figures as a vehicle to market toys.
Oh, wow.
And I got a C on the paper because my professor said it was too opinionated. And for years, I've wanted to send her my business card and say it's not
Right.
it's not opinionated when you're right.
Not anymore.
um, so yeah. So I mean, I was obviously interested in toys, but I never I definitely didn't think I would be doing what I got to do with Mattel.
Did you get to do any screenwriting? Did you do anything that got picked up somewhere?
I actually, yes. Besides, well, I guess as far as any, I mean, I actually have an animated series that's currently optioned that's being reviewed by a few big gun networks and stuff like
Oh
that.
wow, it's really
Uh,
exciting.
yeah, which is really cool because I wrote that like 30 years ago,
Wow.
pre Mattel, and it's been like my, my Star Wars. I mean, it's not
Of
Star Wars.
course. Yeah, yeah.
Everyone's got their thing. Um, and then, I mean, obviously, I think that skill set comes in with the YouTube videos,
Yeah.
understanding how to do story structure and compelling, interesting short form video. So, but I mean, I have not like made any movies or anything like
Right.
that.
I'm going to jump ahead for a second because you mentioned your YouTube channel. I was looking at it before I called you this morning, and you're almost at 19,000 subscribers. So congratulations on that. It looks like you're getting some really good growth there. Um, Particularly your YouTube channel, I have to say from my professional, from what I do now, is one of the most cited channels that I cite when talking to other collectors and to other retailers about sort of the frustrations as a retailer when it comes to, you know, really all consumer goods, really, not just toys, but just how that whole process works. Like your videos are hugely instructional and really help to alleviate a lot of the frustration, I think, that not only as a collector, but also as a retailer. So,
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, kind of very, very much sort of what I was going for. Obviously, I watch a lot of YouTube, although I have
right.
no sort of cognitive schema. I mean, thank you for the compliment about the where I am with subscribers, but I sort of have like no idea. Like, is that good? Like, how long does like I don't really like I've never built a channel before.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Okay, so yeah, it's like I don't I don't really have any idea of like I mean how fast normal channels get built, but it seems like it's definitely going well.
If it makes you feel any better, the channel that we have dedicated for our show, now we share that channel with two other podcasts which we produce from our sort of budding production company. But I think we're actually sitting at about 11, and that's after a little over 6 months of actually having a YouTube channel. So at 19,000, you're well ahead of the curve.
Well, I absolutely, I mean, I absolutely appreciate the positive feedback, and that is what I was going for.
Yeah.
Was there's so many YouTube channels about toys, but 90% of them are either look, here's a toy I just bought and I'm going to review
Right.
it,
Yeah.
or here's the history of Boglins, or
Yeah.
something like that. So yeah, I mean, I was really, I think we were saying before we started recording about how when I was at Mattel, I started doing the videos because I wanted to market to toy collectors the way I wish toy companies would market to me as a toy
Yeah.
collector. It's like the hair club for men. I'm also a member, and so yeah, so the YouTube videos were basically, yeah, I was like, well, I also kind of felt it sort of not felt bad, but it was like I would see people constantly talking online about things that I knew just like weren't true, or
Right.
they were under a false premise of how the actual industry works. And I was like, you're getting so upset over something that you're not truly informed about. So maybe I
Right.
could shed some light, because I hate seeing people spend energy on something that's, if you will, maybe sort of like not fixable, or
Right.
there at least there is a fix, but you're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So
Those videos that you did for classics, were you under any instruction from your bosses to do that, or was that something that you just decided, look, I'm going to go out and do this because there is a hole here that the fan community needs some filling?
oh, the videos at Mattel, you mean?
Yeah.
The ones I was like shooting with my phone for the first 2 years. Oh gosh, no. I mean, so everything with Matty Collector was, I mean, the best way to put it was it was a hobby job.
Okay.
My job was running the DC Universe line, and then
Right.
eventually Green Lantern movie, and then my last job at Mattel was launching the Hot Wheels Star Wars line.
Okay.
So a brand manager at Mattel, which is what my title was for a good chunk of the years, you have to you basically you have to oversee a certain amount of business, just for a round number. Again, because I can't talk about Mattel
No, of
proprietary
course
stuff,
not.
but say $50 million or $100 million.
Okay.
Maddie was obviously nowhere close to this, sort of the minimum requirement for what you would call a body and a seat.
Right.
Like, so the DC lines that I managed justified a full-time brand manager.
Okay.
Maddie wasn't even close. So I was sort of allowed to do Maddie as long as I did it in addition to my regular job.
Interesting.
So the videos were basically, you also get what's called non-media money, which is money to spend on advertising. And it could be
Right.
everything from buying TV or radio time to making Moss Man deodorant to hand out at Comic-Con.
Okay, right.
So that's directly tied to sales.
Right.
With the higher sales, if you're a billion-dollar brand like Hot Wheels, you're going to get a lot of money to advertise it.
Okay.
So basically, I was doing it on top of my regular job, and I had no money or very little to advertise it. So the videos were more or less just it was like, well, I could do this, it won't cost anything. I'll just shoot the video myself, upload it, and it was basically whatever I had in my tool chest, and it was limited. So that's really where it came from.
It's interesting to hear you talk about marketing the brand and essentially saying that you did it on a shoestring. As a fan, like I said, as a day one subscriber on my end of things, like I just saw this never ending sort of refresh of characters and new product month over month over month, and then of course year over year over year. And to me, it was this hugely successful direct to consumer line, and I'd never seen anything like it before.
And I don't want to give the impression that Mattel didn't support it. They absolutely did, and there were times even having the Maddie collector line is what helped us secure the Ghostbuster license, because Sony saw what we were doing, aiming product at the adult collector. So, but it was really because of the subscribers, because as as a retailer, the way most toy lines work, 99% of them work, is let's say there's a line, Marvel Legends, whatever, that's going to have 10 waves for the year.
Okay.
They'll show retailers, they meaning the toy maker, at a toy fair, they'll show the retailers one wave, like 6 figures.
Right.
And they'll say, this represents a year of product. And if you like this and you want to carry this, you need to place an order for the full year.
Right.
X amount per wave. And they'll do that. So with Maddie Collector, the subscribers basically just took the place of retailers within that established system. Yeah. And that was, so like when the subscriptions would come up, we'd show you guys 6 figures, give or take, and that would represent a year of product, and we'd need you to commit as a subscription to it. And it basically found a way of getting the Mattel sell-in system to work directly to fans, but maintain the same guarantee that a year could be. And it was why, because as long as the subscribers were subscribing, that's what allowed the endless character selection.
You'd mentioned in a previous video, taking some flack over that model, that subscription model, where Mattel as a company really didn't ask for a lot of money up front, and they still were able to deliver sort of month over month, whereas opposed to, I want to compare it to the barge at Hasbro for Star Wars, where it was like, oh my God, there's so much money up front. And not, again, in my own ignorance, not understanding how things work, I've always defended it by saying, listen, I bought the classics Castle Grayskull on nothing more than a rendering. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, how difficult was it for you to say, let's do this, but let's not take the money up front?
I think some of it was being naive. We should have taken the money up front, or at least a good chunk of it, because a lot of people bailed on it.
Is that right?
A ridiculous amount, yeah.
Really?
And that really hurt the brand and hurt our ability to do more big things.
Sure.
But we had before we did that, we had so much success with the hoverboard.
Right. Yeah.
That was what got Castle Grayskull approved. Was the fact that the hoverboard did so successful, like one item that it was like 120, wasn't that expensive, but the idea of one SKU, that could do a lot of units, that was high end. So I get why Hasbro does, like I ordered the Sentinel, investments, and I paid out for that. It's like you give Hasbro a interest-free loan, but I get why, because they have to pay for tooling, and they're taking a risk, and the only way to minimize that risk is to have guaranteed sales for something like that.
I think that's where there's a breakdown, within the fan community, within the collector community, is they don't understand the associated costs. And there are other YouTubers out there that are pretty vocal about it. Like you say, like you're giving Hasbro an interest-free loan, and the words, multi-billion-dollar company come up. Why do they need my, couple $100?
Well, so Magneto just fell off the show.
Oh no.
The simple reason is they don't need to do the barge. It makes way more sense for them not to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work for, in perspective of a multi-billion-dollar company, very little revenue.
Right.
I mean, it's a PR exercise, but it all has the potential backfire, like Cookie Monster did, where it doesn't you look like what they did with Unicron, like, extending and extending and extending the deadline, because if it didn't go through, that was really going to hurt the brand PR-wise.
Yes.
And that Transformers was their own IP. So something like, like where you're going to pay for it up front, as opposed to like, come on, Hasbro, you must have like an extra, couple $1 million sitting around in a locker. It just doesn't work that way for, for them to do what's really even something like the Razor Crest that did like 20,000 plus units.
Yeah.
That's still tiny. Like, I know it's a big item, but it's like, you have to realize that Fisher Price and Play School and Monopoly and Barbie and, these brands are billion-dollar brands that do units in the millions. And, to me, the biggest disconnect, and I've made a few videos on my channel, is how much, because, as adult collectors, I mean, you can see all my stuff behind me.
Yeah.
Love this stuff. We put so much emotion into it. And I mean, it becomes, it's our hobby. And like, whenever I worked with new brand managers, when I would train them, I would always tell them, whatever you do on a Sunday afternoon, whether it's playing the piano or jet skiing or hiking or tennis or walking your dog, whatever brings you joy, take that feeling, multiply it by 100, and that's how your customers feel about this product.
Yeah.
And but that the disconnect is very much how much, we see ourselves as the center of the universe. And, these toys are made for us, and there must be a team of artisans and crack, film pop culture geeks working on this, when in reality, you're lucky if the brand manager is aware of the property before they became a brand manager.
Sure.
And, we represent such a tiny drop that they could just stop making adult collector product, and it would actually be easier for companies.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like if you're running the company and you're talking to the stockholders, which, Hasbro, Mattel are publicly traded companies, as are Spin Masters on the Canadian Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Jax is publicly owned. It makes way more sense just, if you think of a glass of water as representing the total amount of manpower, woman power, people power.
Yeah.
That you could put, and you pour that glass into brands.
Right.
Well, does it make sense to pour that glass into Hot Wheels and Play School and Monopoly? Or does it make sense to pour that into making sail barges and Scare Glow figures?
Right, right.
And that's, I think, the disconnect that we as collectors have, and what creates what I call unnecessary frustration.
Yeah, you'd mentioned it before, and I echo that. There's a certain emotional connection that we have to this stuff often outweighs the reality of what the situation really is. And sometimes it's hard to separate the emotion from the reality.
And I don't think there's many other like consumer products or even, entertainment that are like this, where the audience is so, so emotionally involved, and versus the, I guess, yeah, obligation of a company to actually make that. Like, you don't see this with scented candles or wrenches or number two pencils.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no fan outrage over not having a pencil.
Yeah.
So, Master of the Universe, huge, rich history. We're talking what, 5 animated series to date, with 2 more in the pipeline. Several supporting action figure lines, comic books. As of today, 1 live action film. Where do you think the high water mark is for the brand in terms of the lineage?
Like, when did it peak?
Yeah.
Um, well, I mean, for kids, it peaked in 1985.
Yeah.
I mean, mathematically, money wise, units sold. And then, I mean, it's not that Mattel got greedy, but it's the brand managers at the time overshipped tertiary characters. And they didn't ship enough of the characters you could see on Filmation, like classic He-Man, Man-at-Arms, Teela, Skeletor. You couldn't find, Dragon Blaster Skeletor was great, but to get new kids into the brand, they wanted He-Man, like you looked on the show.
Of course, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that was absolutely the peak of He-Man in pop culture.
Right.
I think for collectors, 2 peaks were the 2000X show, like the second season, and
Right.
then Castle Grayskull in the Classics line.
Yeah.
Was kind of the peak of that. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping the best is yet to come. I mean, with them putting so much energy into 2 new shows, and there's like 7 different form factors at retail right now.
Yeah.
Or coming, this year.
Both of those are things I want to touch on, because I think they're one, they're important. 2, they're super exciting. Before I get to that, I want to talk about your time on the brand at Mattel. What was what would you say was the one thing that you got to do that you would say was your greatest achievement with the brand?
I mean, the castle was. I think it's a combination of the castle and completing the vintage line.
Yeah.
To me, that's always something that's like so important with a reimagining of a brand, any brand. Like we did that with Superpowers as well over on the DC line. We did every figure that was released in the original Kenner Superpowers line.
Right.
And this is something, as an example, I'm also a big collector of Star Wars 3 3/4, and they still haven't finished the vintage line, like, to this day.
I think that's one where they never will.
And they have like 3 figures to go. I mean, it depends on how you do the math, or what variants you might count. But
Sure.
I mean, the Imperial dignitary Slimaloo is
right.
Him. That's kind of crazy to me. So getting every single figure, I know we didn't get to all the new Adventures figures, but that was sort of never part of the promise. They were always like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And even She-Ra completing Princess of Power was awesome, but the vintage He-Man line, I mean, you can nitpick and say we didn't do like the Meteorbs or something, but every figure, deluxe figure,
Sure. Yeah.
was done in classics. And to me, that is like spectacular.
So let's look at the other. I just want to touch on the flip side of that. Was there something that you wanted to do for Masters Universe that for whatever reason you just were not able to do during your time on the brand?
I mean, I really wanted to get to the slime pit, which we had plans for.
Oh, wow.
But that would have been just like another mini play set. One thing I had really wanted to do, and it's sort of a quasi Masters, was doing a major Matt Mason classic line that was going to tie into Masters.
Oh, wow.
Through Marlena. I have a video on my channel about this, but basically the idea of, since Marlena was in a green spacesuit from Earth, and the original major Matt Mason figures were all in primary colors in spacesuits, but there was no green character.
Right.
So my idea was to use her as the crossover character, and bring in Major Matt Mason into the Motu world as these Earth astronauts, and she happened to be the one that got to Eternia.
Right.
I thought that would have been really fun, but I just could not get enough people behind me.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. Masters Universe is one of those brands where I think as fans, we tend to do that too. We talk about sort of what other properties kind of work with it. Any other properties you think combine really well with Masters Universe?
I mean, there's quite a few. I mean, the ones that fans bring up all the time are things like, Black Star, Brave Star.
Yeah,
Those aren't owned by Mattel though. So like I constantly would be asked, would you do Brave Star figure? I'm like,
right,
I can't do Brave Star figures in Masters just the way I can't do Star Wars figures in Masters.
right.
It's not like Mattel owned Major Matt Mason. Mattel
That's
owned
right.
Monster
Yeah,
High. So if I wanted to bring Monster High into it, I could, but it doesn't fit thematically. And so like yeah, I mean, I would get so many requests to do Brave Star figures or Black Star figures,
yeah.
but that's the same way as saying like, well, Conan or John Carter would fit,
Sure.
aesthetically, or Tarzan. Like, yeah, they would, but Mattel doesn't own them, and if I contact the owner, they're really probably not going to want you to do their toys in another brand.
No, yeah. Don't dilute my brand.
Right. Like if I happen to get the license to make, well, like Thundercats is a perfect example.
Right.
That was one that, even though I left Mattel before the first figure came out, that was a big project I worked on, was getting the Thundercats license. And you'll notice we didn't do Thundercats figures as like part of the He-Man world. We did them
No.
as Thundercats figures.
Yeah, of course.
Like Warner Brothers is not gonna want you to do that.
No.
Like you said, dilute the brand. So
Yeah, exactly. But that's a big rabbit hole, and you talked about. I'll just touch on this sort of lightly right now because I'm going to come back to it. But that is a bit of a rabbit hole when you talk about who owns what, and if you start tracing the lineage down to, you know, LJN produced the action figures, but Rankin Bass produced the entertainment, and then those companies get bought and sold, and trying to keep track of all that can be it can be pretty daunting.
yeah, especially Masters, it'll give you a headache.
Yeah.
Video, like just tracing like the ownership of like Mattel does not own Masters. And
So that was a huge revelation for me to watching that video, and I'd had this conversation in the last couple of weeks with some of my friends who are pretty serious Masters collectors, and I said, you realize that in 2023 there's the potential for some major change to happen.
and I think that's also why Mattel is like quadrupling down right now on the form factors.
Right.
Because one, they're going to lose the license, or at least lose right now what they have, and I could be wrong because Mattel, but from my best understanding, they have first pass rights at toys.
Right.
So Universal, who owns Masters, would come to Mattel and say, okay, we want a line of 6-inch action figures.
Right.
Do you want to make them? And if Mattel says no, then they have the right to go to another toy company.
That's right.
So that's also why I think Mattel is putting out Fisher Price and Imaginext and Mega Bloks, because Universal could say, okay, we want to do construction. Will you do that? Because if Mattel said no, they would go to Lego.
Of course,
want to do young kid toy, toddler toys.
Yeah.
And if Mattel says no, then they'll go to Play School. So Mattel sort of is in a position where they sort of have to say yes to everything.
Well, it's funny you say that because that was sort of my follow-up was suddenly, in a transitory kind of way, we had Mattel with the brand through Masters Universe Classics, and then we saw the shift over to Super 7, and suddenly Super 7 took over the line, and now it's like, wait a minute, they're done, like surreptitiously done, and suddenly there's this deluge of new Masters of the Universe product from Mattel, and I couldn't help but wonder after I saw your video, like, with this looming 2023 date, is Mattel trying to send the message to Universal that they are in fact the best place to place the brand?
I think it's partially that, and partially anything they say no to, even now, then
right.
that automatically triggers Universal to have the right to go to another toy company.
Right.
So they're sort of in a position, it's like a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
And they have to say yes.
Right.
Otherwise, another toy company starts making He-Man toys like that.
So one of the other things you'd mentioned in your video was that Universal recently signed a strategic partnership with Hasbro. So let's imagine for a second, Mattel says no for whatever reason. Is there another toy company out there that you think is well equipped, or maybe should be given a shot at Masters of the Universe?
Um, I mean, I mean, Hasbro definitely makes the best action figures. They kind of own the category the way Mattel owns die-cast cars and dolls.
Right.
And that's actually always been a whole thing where it's like there's like an unofficial treaty between the companies that they
Okay.
don't, tread on each other's, and it's definitely broken down over the years, like especially with Hasbro getting the Disney Princess license
Right.
after Mattel made Ever After High without telling Disney, but that's a whole other YouTube video. So, um, you know, with that treaty out of the way, part, I mean, part of me is like, how much Motu do we need?
Right.
I mean, there's been so many form factors between what Super 7 has done, Funko has done, Mondo has done. What I love about classics is it's like a complete line. I mean, there's definitely more you could do. I'd love to see
Right.
more new adventures, more Filmation, more 2000X. There's always more. And I don't think any line will ever get as deep. So to me, I mean, whatever company is making it, I would continue making classics. I mean, not just because I worked on it, but because like I don't think we'll ever get Origins that deep or the Fisher Price Little People that deep.
Right. Well, it certainly was, for me as an adult toy collector, and I didn't come back to toys as an adult until 2007. So it's still relatively recent in the grand scheme of things for me. And so Masters of the Universe Classics was a huge part of, and still is a huge part of my toy collection. So I certainly agree with you on that, and I would love to see more of it. Who knows? But these the Revelations figures. I don't know if you saw the promos for the first couple. There was a He-Man and a Battle Cat, I think, and a Skeletor advertised just a few weeks ago. What did you think of those?
You're talking about the Revelations, not the
Yeah,
Cheap
the
Live show.
Yeah, the Revelations ones.
Yeah. So I actually I did do a video on it on which I'll plug it, Spectre Creative on YouTube. I haven't plugged it yet. So I did do a video about that. Basically, to me, it looks like an exact carbon copy from a manufacturing spreadsheet standpoint of 2000X, where they're putting out an animated series, doing figures based on that animated series look, and while in this case they're calling it a collector line,
Right.
but factually, a collector line can't work at retail.
No.
The only place a purely collector line can work is online. And you see this with both, everything from what Matty did to what Hasbro Pulse is doing.
Sure.
Making sail barges or even making Hellfire guards,
Right.
that complement your Marvel Legends collection, if you will. Although Marvel Legends has a whole other thing because of the constant content Marvel has that no other brand does. But that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
I'm making some notes here because I'm getting ideas for future videos.
Fantastic. Yeah, of course.
So, I'm sorry, I forgot. I forgot what the question was.
That's okay. We were. Oh my lord, where were we? We were talking Revelations and sort of what did you think of the Revelations figures that were just advertised?
So, a lot of it I think is going to depend on the show, how interesting the show is and entertaining it. I am a big Kevin Smith fan. I love his Cloaks animated series. Yeah. I think that's one of the best things he's ever done. I think those 6 episodes are like, there's not a moment in any one of those 6 episodes that's not gold. So I love what he does with animation. Obviously, this may take a different tone, but I think the popularity of the figures long term is going to depend on the interest in the show.
Right.
Because if the show is good, people will want toys from it, like they want toys from 2000X. If the show's not interesting, then it's kind of like how there's so many. When the first X-Men movie came out in 99, 2000.
Yeah, 2000.
We all rushed out. We were so excited to get movie X-Men figures.
Right.
And part of the idea was this was the first time this was like our only chance to ever get these. We would never get, this is like the one X-Men movie. Maybe there'll be a sequel. And
Right.
now here we are, and there's like 10 X-Men movies, or whatnot. They don't even make toys for the recent ones, except like at Comic-Con. And so, and no one really has interest in buying toys from the first X-Men movie for the most part. I mean, they
It's
did
certainly not now, that's for sure.
right, especially now that they're going to be part of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, yeah.
Movies, the X-Men will get totally rebooted. Or same thing with Spider-Man. No one's running out to buy Tobey Maguire Spider-Man action figures.
No.
So Motu is kind of like that too, where if we're constantly getting new interpretations of the brand, then which is the one that collectors get all in on? And that was sort of the whole point of classics. Was it was not a definitive, but it was one that everyone you could get behind, and you could get the whole world in one style. With Revelations, it obviously has its own look. I think a lot of people are under the impression that we're going to get classics figures
Sure.
in that series, and they look cool. If the show is awesome, I will definitely, it's something I feel like, oh yeah, like I want a couple figures to represent my love for that particular show. But
I couldn't help but notice the promo picture, and I was surprised that there wasn't really a lot of high resolution photography for those. But that He-Man and Battle Cat, when I first saw it, it immediately made me think of the Staction. The Stactions from NECA. There was a Filmation style He-Man done as a Staction, and I thought that is literally that Staction riding on Battle Cat. So interesting stylistic choices that it's, I don't want to say a step backwards, but on some level, maybe it is.
it looks a lot. I mean, it does. It looks more like 2000X from a style standpoint than it
Yeah.
does the vintage. Origins. Looks like the old
Yeah.
toys.
Yeah, of course.
Versus so yeah, again, I think it's going to come down to how good the show is. If the show is mind-blowingly amazing, then it'll fuel toys. If it's
Of course,
good,
yeah.
it'll, people will get like their token figure to represent that series. I think a
Of
lot
course,
of
yeah.
collectors collect that way. They have some lines are all in on, and others where they get like a token representative of that IP.
Well, Scott, with Revelations, it's been pitched as the direct continuation of the Filmation series. I was a fan of the Filmation series. I assume you were as well. Not as serialized as the Mike Young show was. So when Kevin Smith says that this show is going to be the continuation of Filmation, I think back to how many plot lines in Filmation, because there weren't a whole lot of multi-part sort of stories in that series. Is there a plot thread or maybe a story idea that from Filmation you'd like to see fleshed out or completed within Revelations?
Well, what I think, and obviously I have no insight into what they're doing, but what I'm guessing is it will be about Tila and her mother, and there's basically. I actually wrote a He-Man movie while I was at Mattel. You asked me if I'd written movies, and I have written more than's been shot. And the way I wrote it was with the triangular relationship between Man-at-Arms, Adam, and Tila.
Right.
Because they all, Adam loves Tila. Tila was raised by Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms trains Adam.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that will be probably the backbone emotionally of this series, because as you said, yeah, it's not like there were that many deep.
No.
But the one going on was Tila's revelation in Filmation that she who her mother was. There also could potentially be, something about, Adam learning where his powers come from.
Sure.
But to me, it's like, well, they come from the castle. It's not, ooh, oh, they come from the castle. My God, my life has changed.
Knowing that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No.
Knowing that the bios for Masters of the Universe Classics largely leaned into what they were potentially going to do with the third season of the Mike Young production, maybe any chance some of those plot lines you think they'll get picked up maybe and kind of fleshed out in this series?
Personally, I would love that, because I was such a huge fan of 2000X,
as was I,
series and toys. I mean, it did a lot better with collectors than kids, but that's also why it didn't last, because it only appealed to collectors. And
Yeah.
that's actually going back to my previous thought about Revelations. When I'm saying it feels like a carbon copy of that, is that it might do really great with collectors, and that's awesome, but that's not enough for it to keep it retail, or to or even the episodes.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea how Netflix judges, all, that kind of thing, number of watches. But either way, a show like that, presumably, especially a toy line, has to have kid interest. So I mean, I'd love it if they picked up 2000X subplots. I would
Yeah.
just want to see more 2000X. Honestly, I'd rather just say, I'd almost rather if Kevin Smith said, this is a continuation of 2000X versus a continuation of Filmation, because 2000X was a reimagining of
Yeah,
Filmation already.
exactly. Yeah.
Like it already took the ball and rolled with it, and so that's again why I feel like this is just 2000X all over again.
Yeah.
And why would you repeat something failed?
Yeah. How do you reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, like you already did this, it didn't work, and now
Yeah.
you're doing it again 20 years later. It's like,
Well,
what's the definition of insanity?
I guess so. I think it has a lot to do with maybe the way that consumers are consuming their entertainment, and streaming is plays a large role in that. I mean, we saw it with Voltron Legendary Defender, which by all accounts was a pretty successful series. Toy wise, I don't know, that's arguable.
Well, and that's where more I'm thinking is toys. I mean, sure, the show
Yeah.
might, do fine, but they're really looking at this as a toy property.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Uh, I want to change it up a little bit, and I know we're kind of going over our time here, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so I'm going to try and blast through the last few questions here so you can get on with your day.
no problem.
Thank you very much again. A lot of people may not know this, but you were immortalized as a Masters of the Universe Classics character. In fact, your portrait was used for one of the Eternian Palace Guards. Can you tell me what that process was like?
Besides being like a total, like, lifelong, wow moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were doing generic guards, and I had mentioned to the horsemen, like, oh, it'd be like so cool, like we should all be the guards, and they had
Right.
no desire to be them themselves.
They did not want to.
Because they already, like, Cornbow was like, I've already been a figure in McFarlane line, and Eric was like two figure. He was like Dr. Frankenstein and something else in the McFarlane line. So like I actually offered it to them first. And I was
Right.
like, okay, well then you should do the, like, us Mattel, the people who work on the brand. They're like, all right, take some pictures of yourself. I'm like, seriously, you'll do this? I mean, I said it kind of as a joke, especially
Sure.
because I offered them the chance first. So I just like had, my coworkers shoot me from the front and the side and sent them the
Right.
pictures. And, 6 months later, there comes the sculpt. And I was like, wow, that's so cool.
Well, the translation of that figure, the portrait is actually, it's very faithful. It's clearly you.
My mother doesn't think that.
Is that right?
I do, but she's like, yeah, which I'm like, are you kidding?
Okay, while we're talking about figures, let's talk about this guy right here. Hey, look at that.
Oh, that guy. I have that guy.
Yeah.
Right.
He's
Here,
behind you on your shelf. Oh, you've got a couple. You've got a couple of them there.
Yeah, he's like everywhere. He's
Sure.
on every shelf in my office.
So, Mighty Spectre, you took a lot of flack over this character.
Yes, I did.
I guess for me, like, as somebody who, like I say, coming into the brand as an adult, I had a completely different look at sort of what we were getting. And so for me, some of these, I think he came out at the right time, to be honest with you, because at that point I was still very eager. I'll take anything and everything. It's good that has the Masters label on it. And it wasn't until 2015 where I was starting to check out. So, I mean, props for getting him out at the time that you did. But given the flack that you took at the time, what about, like, are fans still talking about this character? Are you still getting the sort of the, oh, you abuse of power or whatever the case may have been at the time? Or are new fans who are discovering the character now, are they more receptive to him, do you think?
I mean, yeah. There's definitely that. Yeah, that whole, like, especially because most of, I think, what fans thought about the character, like, turned out not to be true.
Right.
Like I was trying to make him the new He-Man, or make him the centerpiece of the brand, which was so not true. Um, yeah, and and plus now he's one of 350 action figures
Right.
versus at the time it was like he was the new character coming and the spotlight was on him, and it was like, what right do I have to make a He-Man toy? And I'm like, well, I mean, the story is that I tried to get people who worked on the brand in the vintage line to create new characters
Yeah.
or comic book like celebrities. No one would do it for free. Like, again, I was spending all this time trying to reach out to creators of the brand or well-known people who worked on it,
Sure.
or comic book creators. That management finally said, "Stop! You are wasting your time.
Yeah.
Like, we don't approve of you using all this time trying to reach out to people to do something for free. Just do it like you and Terry do the figures because people know who you guys are." So like literally it was because management was like sick and tired of me trying to track down Mattel designers from the 80s. So and I spent so much of my it's like, again, this was a brand I was doing in my spare time.
Right.
Whether I deserved a slot, I mean, it's not about that, but I was like, but I had no qualms about getting a slot like that. I was like, this is cool, like it's fun. I think some of the weirdest comments were when people would say like, he looks like he doesn't look like he belongs in Masters because he looks like Deadpool or whatever.
I had read some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I created him as a kid way before Deadpool was created.
Of course. Yeah.
And Deadpool, I mean, yeah, there is one version of him that has a chest thing like
Yeah.
Spectre, but that's like not his main look, and that's like, again, like I created him years earlier, but also, Motu has a firefighter with a robotic elephant head and a cowboy with guns that come out of his chest and a flying monkey with a jetpack. I mean, like I'd hear people on like He-Man podcasts talk about how Motu is a brand that's like all inclusive for everybody. All designs are welcome, and then Spectre would come out, except Spectre.
Except that guy. I got to tell you, I saw the character and I saw the miniaturized cosmic key on his wrist, and I was immediately sold.
Yeah, and that was I think that was Terry who came up with that. I absolutely handed it to him, like doing the cosmic key. I was like, oh my god, that's genius! I love it. So,
well, I personally think that Spectre is a fantastic character. He is well deserving of his slot within the brand, and I hope that character, hey, here's a pitch for you, you guys over at Netflix. If you want to get the Mighty Spectre in on your show, I don't think there's a lot of us out here that wouldn't mind that. So
he showed up in the Masterverse comics that Tim Seeley wrote, and that like blew my mind.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, like I was flipping through it in the comic store. I was like, oh my god, Spectre's like he lives.
Yeah,
like, someone's actually doing something with this character. That's amazing.
I want to take a quick second here and talk about something that I don't want to touch a chord, but we all kind of on bated breath watched the Masters of the Universe episode of The Toys That Made Us on Netflix, and there seems to me that there was a glaring omission there, namely the 10 years of work that you put in on the brand without even so much as a single name drop. I consider that to be an omission. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, no, I was watching it too. I was so excited, and as they were getting to the class, I'm like, all right, they're going to talk about classics. This is cool.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they credited Super 7 with all 10 years of that. Like, what the? I mean, I wasn't like offended, but I was like confused only because the show prided itself on being a well-researched documentary.
Yeah.
So either A, they didn't do their homework, which doesn't feel like they did, because or B, someone told them specifically not to mention me. I don't know. I mean, right after I left the Comic-Con panel they totally threw me under the bus, which I thought was pretty insane. So maybe there were, people bitter. There's a lot of politics in the toy industry. I have no idea. But I mean, yeah, I was like, wow, they totally just not only snubbed me, but they actually credited Super 7 with 10 years of my work.
it's a
Well,
really important point for me to hit as a fan, because I think the more people that understand that, the more the better, again, the better informed we'll be. And I just think it's a great injustice to you. The flip side of that is the Power of Grayskull documentary.
yes, yeah, I worked with Isaac Elliot Fisher on that. Is a great documentary filmmaker and a toy maker himself. And yeah, that was really, I mean, it was good to tell, my side of the story. Plus, I also have my YouTube channel to,
Right.
try to, where I'm literally, I think I've created more hours of He-Man documentary than any other person on the planet.
Yeah, really.
Is an interesting way. So, maybe they'll do a follow up. Who knows? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't insulted or anything, but I was a little like, that was interesting.
Yeah, I can see. I don't know about you. You certainly wear it better than I would. I would definitely be upset about that. So, um, just a couple of quick questions, and I'm going to wrap it up because I'm way over my time. And don't laugh at me for this one, but on a scale of curse you all to I have the power, where does the 1987 live action movie sit for you?
Um, where does it sit? Maybe like if you were going to draw a line right in the middle between those two, it's slightly more towards curse you.
Yeah,
I mean, it's enjoyable. It's still enjoyable. I mean, I've watched it recently. I was actually watching it. It was the scene where Beastman crashes through the gym on Earth. When he's looking for the kids,
right.
Courtney Cox, and my wife walked in and was like, "What are you watching?" Like, it just looked like a terrible '80s movie to her for like that
Sure.
one instant. Plus,
Yeah.
you've got like He-Man driving around in a pink Cadillac. I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, like why budget wise, mixed direction from Mattel. He-Man, can't use a sword. He-Man must use a sword.
Right.
So I like it. I've met Gary Goddard. He's a great guy. I got to meet with him on some projects we were doing. Yeah, I mean, I think he had some unfortunate limitations imposed on him by
Yeah.
both the studio and by Mattel. It's a good '80s movie. It's I can't rewatch it the way I can watch Temple of Doom or Empire
Sure,
Strikes Back
sure.
unlimited times.
Right.
But it's not. I don't. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not a horrible movie in any. It's watchable.
It is watchable. It's fun. I hold it in the same vein as maybe the Flash Gordon film with Sam Jones. It's so over the top ridiculous that it's just, you watch it for what it is, and don't expect a whole lot out of it.
Yeah, you just have to like detach your expectations for a
Yeah.
He-Man movie and accept, okay, this is what it is, and enjoy it for what it is.
So speaking of live action movies, that license lies over at Sony, and the reboot has recently been pulled from their release schedule. I suspect that has a lot to do with what's going on in the world with the coronavirus. Do you think that the live action film can survive the pandemic?
I don't think there's anything to do with the pandemic. And again, if you listeners, head over to Spectral Creative on YouTube. I did a video about this. Essentially, here's the deal with the He-Man movie. And I mean, I've read many scripts. I actually have copies of them in a box in my closet. I wrote one with the intent
Right.
of trying to show Sony this is how I think the movie could work. The problem is that it's too expensive to make, no matter how you cut it.
Okay.
It's because it's a fantasy world. We're talking, like Avatar, Lord of the Rings style.
Yeah.
There's no way you can make that movie for less than $250 million, and make it look good.
Yeah.
Make it, if you will, like Transformers can take place on Earth, and yeah, you've got to CGI the robots, but you don't have to CGI the whole world, if you will.
Right.
And that's why the original '87 movie took place on Earth. They got him off Eternia, and the only scenes in Eternia were a couple backdrops, and the one set they built was the inside of Castle Grayskull,
Yeah.
which they tried to use as much as possible because it was so damn expensive. So to make the movie, $250 million make it minimum, even if you get like D-list talent, if you will. And you've then got to spend $250 million promoting the movie to re-educate the public that this brand exists. Because, well, again, for us, He-Man is like top of mind. For most people, it's like, wait, that naked barbarian guy from the 80s, right. And there was Orko, and there was a green cat, I think. Very little of Motu is recognizable by pop culture at large. Way less than we think. We're biased.
Yeah, for sure.
Believe me, I've seen the data. Like, you know, like when you ask people, like, name, you know, 4 things about He-Man, they'll be like, He-Man, a green cat, little floaty guy. That's about it. Skeletor maybe comes up. You know, show them a picture of Buzz-Off, and they have no idea who that is.
Okay.
So between the cost of making the movie and the cost of promoting the movie, you're talking about $500 million.
Yeah.
And to do a first movie for $500 is like no studio's gonna like basically Sony finally wised up and looked at the numbers and were like, oh my God, no, we're not. There's no way we're funding this. Yeah, it's way too expensive to make.
Well, that's unfortunate. You know, hopefully, you know, with the amount of money that the streaming services are throwing at stuff, look at, like you say, Lord of the Rings is a good example. Amazon Prime has thrown a bunch of money at developing that into a series. Who knows? Maybe if Revelations takes off, there'll be some renewed interest from one of the streamers, and maybe we'll see something live action down the road.
I mean, believe me, I would love to see an amazing He-Man movie. I mean, I got to know quite a few of the directors that were attached to the project at different times. They all had amazing visions of doing it. It's the money.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, who's going to write that? Who's going to write the check?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, for an unproven property, if you will.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so.
Well, Scott, I got to say a huge thank you for giving me an hour of your time. We're well over the time that I asked for. I can't thank you enough for wanting to sit down with me this morning and chat about your time with the brand and kind of where it's been and where it might be going. Before I let you go, though, I just want to touch on sort of any projects you have on the go. Any like, how can people connect with you if they want to see what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you. It was good to do a plug. So besides my YouTube channel, which is Spector Creative, Spector with an O, you can also find me on spectracreative.com, where I offer consulting services. I work with people who have either in development projects or ideas for projects for branding, content, and retail solutions. So, you know, a lot of my clients are toy related. If you have an idea for an action figure line and want to go from how do I go from my idea in my head to seeing it hanging at Target? That's what I do. Right. I help people, you know, get there between making connections, developing product lines with retail in mind. You can't just have like one item. You have to think about, you know, how it's going to skew at retail. How are you going to brand it? Do you need content? So I offer all of those type of solutions. I do have a huge project that's about to be announced, but I can't do it quite yet. But you know, let's just say I'm not done being a toy maker myself.
Oh, that's great.
So more on that probably in a matter of a couple of weeks, if not months, or months if not weeks, soon this year. So yeah, spectracreative.com. Check me out, and you can always contact me through that site.
Any chance you can talk about the option that you have out right now?
It's a boys action adventure property. I mean, very much like Motu. You know, I don't want to give away the cat out of the bag with even what it's themed, but
sure.
You know, it's basically everything that I love about toys and movies and all of that. Yeah, I've been developing it for now almost 30 years.
Wow.
You know, which is why I think the company was interested in optioning it, because I had something like 27 scripts written and a giant Bible and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I had to put it in a closet during Mattel. The whole 10 years, I had to like not touch it. Yeah. But as soon as I left Mattel, I brought it out and spruced it up, and hopefully it'll get picked up and I'll be able to announce that too.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of exciting things going on in your life. And as a fan, I look forward to your continued success and hearing about all of the things that you have going on. I'll make sure that we have the appropriate links in any of our social media to make sure that people can get directed to you. Again, this was a huge Star Trek moment for me. That whole like Picard's hand on the Phoenix. It was a huge thrill for me to be able to sit down and chat with you about all things Master of the Universe, and of course, what's going on in your life. I really appreciate your willingness to want to sit down and do this. I cannot thank you enough. Um, and hey, if this episode goes over very well, maybe there's a chance I can call on you again sometime.
Oh, doors always open, as well as especially as a toy retailer. Any ideas for topics or things I can clarify or do a
Sure.
video on? Like, doors always open on that too.
Well, that's interesting because I'm in several large by Canadian standards Facebook toy groups, and certainly I can start kind of poking around and see sort of what people are interested in, and maybe it's something that we can communicate on.
Even do team up on. I mean, I love clarifying information for
Yeah,
toy
that's
sellers, toy makers, anyone involved in the industry. So yeah, doors
yeah.
always open.
Oh, I'd love the opportunity to chat with you again sometime. This has been a total thrill, and I again thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with me.
Oh, my pleasure. When it goes live, send me the link and I'll put it on all my
Yeah,
socials.
absolutely. Thanks again, Scott. I hope you have a great day. I'm sure it's warmer where you are than it is here. So
Well, stay healthy and stay safe.
yes, I will. So, and you and your wife as well, and your daughter.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you again.
Absolutely. Have a great one. Have a great
Okay,
rest of your
Scott. Thanks
weekend.
very much. Thank you.
All right.
Bye for now.